While driving my wife and her friends to a spa weekend, I heard her say from the back seat, "Honestly, he's like a rescue dog. You feed him, he wags his tail. So easy to control." They all laughed. When we got there, she just slammed the door and said, "Don't forget to wash the sheets before I get back. They stink like you." I drove 4 hours home in silence. Yesterday, she showed up crying at my door, begging me to talk. The ride that changed everything. The car smelled faintly of coffee and leather. I kept my eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel, while the chatter from the backseat spilled forward like static. My wife and her 3 friends were buzzing with excitement about their spa weekend, laughing, trading gossip, snapping selfies. I didn't mind. I'd agreed to drive them the 4 hours out of town, even though it meant giving up my own weekend. I thought foolishly that it was a gesture of love. But then I heard it, her voice, casual, amused. "Honestly, he's like a rescue dog. You feed him, he wags his tail. So easy to control." The car erupted in laughter. Her friends howled, egging her on. Every syllable sliced through me. My grip on the steering wheel tightened until my knuckles went white. I didn't turn around. I didn't defend myself. I just drove. When we finally arrived at the resort, she didn't even look at me. She slammed the door and tossed her parting shot over her shoulder. "Don't forget to wash the sheets before I get back. They stink like you." Her friends laughed again, heels clicking on the pavement as they strutted away. And I sat there staring at the road ahead with 4 hours of silence waiting for me. That drive home was the longest of my life. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat with the realization of who my wife really was and what I needed to do next. Because one thing was certain. When she came crawling back, the man she mocked as a rescue dog would be the one holding the leash. The long drive home. The moment the resort disappeared in the rearview mirror, silence wrapped around me like a heavy shroud. The road stretched endlessly, each mile echoing her words in my head. "Rescue dog. Easy to control. Sheets stink like you." I replayed it again and again. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stop. My wife hadn't just insulted me. She had stripped me of dignity in front of her friends, reduced years of sacrifice and loyalty into a cruel joke. But with every passing mile, anger gave way to something sharper. Clarity. This wasn't sudden. The signs had been there. The dismissive tone, the subtle mockery at dinners, the way she lit up around others but dimmed when it was just us. I'd ignored it, convinced myself it was stress, bad days, anything but contempt. Now I couldn't ignore it anymore. At a gas station halfway home, I parked and stared at my reflection in the window. Tired eyes, worn clothes. But beneath it all, I saw something she hadn't noticed. Resilience. She thought she was clever, mocking me like I had no options. But she had made one mistake. By underestimating me, she had freed me. When I pulled into our driveway hours later, the house looked the same. But I didn't. I had entered that drive as a husband, trying to keep the peace. I returned as a man ready to dismantle the life of someone who mocked him as if he were disposable. And when she came crawling back, crying at my door, she would discover just how wrong she had been. The quiet preparations. When I stepped into the empty house that night, it felt colder than usual. The silence pressed down, but I welcomed it. It gave me room to think, to plan. For the next few days, I carried on as if nothing had happened. I went to work, cooked simple meals, even made the bed she had mocked. To anyone watching, I was the same man. But inside, I was laying the groundwork. She thought she had broken me with her words. What she didn't realize was that she had awakened something far more dangerous. My patience sharpened into strategy. I started pulling at strings quietly. Finances. I reviewed bank statements, looking for irregular withdrawals or purchases she'd tried to hide. Digital footprint. A few late-night login into her neglected tablet gave me access to group chats and private messages. Her friends weren't just accomplices in laughter. They were her audience for years of subtle humiliation. Legal prep. A discreet meeting with a lawyer gave me clarity. The house, the savings, the accounts, they were protected more than she realized. Especially once evidence of verbal abuse and mockery entered the picture. Each discovery hurt less than the last. The pain was replaced with resolve. I wasn't preparing for an argument or a confrontation. I was preparing for her world to collapse under its own arrogance. And then days later, it happened. She returned. Mascara smeared, voice cracking, eyes swollen with regret. She pounded on the door, begging me to talk, her friends nowhere to be seen. She thought she still held the power. What she didn't know was that while she was away, laughing at me, I had been rewriting the script of her downfall, her desperate return. It was a Saturday evening when the pounding started. Sharp, frantic knocks against the front door. I opened it to find her standing there. The same woman who had laughed at me days before, now disheveled, mascara streaking her cheeks, eyes swollen from crying. She clutched her handbag like a lifeline. Her voice cracked as soon as she saw me. "Please just talk to me. Don't shut me out. She looked around almost as if she expected her friends to be behind her. But they weren't. The women who had laughed with her in the car were nowhere to be found now that the weight of her choices had crushed her. Through choked sobs, she began. I didn't mean it. It was a joke. A stupid joke. I was showing off in front of them. You know me. I say things I don't mean when I'm nervous. But every word rang hollow. I had replayed her cruelty too many times to mistake it for nerves. She wasn't nervous then. She was comfortable. I let her talk. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even interrupt. I simply stood in the doorway, silent, watching her twist herself in knots. And in that silence, she realized it. The balance had shifted. I was no longer the man who wagged his tail for scraps of affection. I was the man holding all the cards, the house, the finances, the evidence of her words. Her tears weren't for me. They were for the life she felt slipping out of her hands. When she finally whispered, "Please give me another chance," I knew this was the moment, not to forgive, but to let her feel what it was like to be dismissed as worthless. The cold response. Her tears fell freely now, dripping onto the marble of the doorstep. The same woman who only days earlier had mocked me in front of her friends stood trembling, begging, desperate to take back words that had already burned themselves into my memory. I didn't move aside. I didn't offer her comfort. I simply looked at her the way she had once looked at me in the car mirror with disdain. My voice was calm, almost too calm. "Do you remember what you called me? A rescue dog, easy to control." Wagging my tail for scraps, she sobbed harder, shaking her head. "I didn't mean it, please." I cut her off. "You meant every word. You didn't just mock me. You mocked our marriage. You mocked the years I worked to give you a life you never earned." Her breath hitched. She had nothing left to say. I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "And now you've lost the one thing you thought you controlled. Me." I held the doorframe, watching her crumble. She reached out, trying to touch my hand, but I stepped back deliberately. "Wash your own sheets from now on. This house isn't yours anymore." She broke down completely, sliding to her knees on the porch, begging me not to close the door. But I did. Slowly, deliberately. The sound of the lock clicking shut was louder than her cries. She thought I was a dog who could be controlled. But she had unleashed something else entirely. A man who had finally learned that silence and dignity are stronger than cruelty and arrogance. And this was only the beginning of her fall. The revenge unleashed. The door closed behind me, but that wasn't the end. If anything, it was the opening act. Closing the door stripped her of the immediate comfort she sought. But now it was time to strip away the illusion of power she still believed she had. The next morning, I went to the bank. With my lawyer's guidance, I froze all joint accounts and rerouted direct deposits into a private account under my name only. For years, she had mocked me as easy to control while relying on my income for her lifestyle, her spa trips, her shopping sprees, her image of superiority. Now, without access to those funds, her control evaporated overnight. I didn't scream or post online. Instead, I quietly shared the truth with the right people. Screenshots of her cruel messages from that spa weekend, recordings of her laughter in the car, captured by the dashcam she forgot existed, and the final insult about our sheets. I compiled them all. Her friends, family, and colleagues soon saw her not as the witty, charming woman she pretended to be, but as the arrogant, ungrateful wife who mocked the very man who carried her. Invitations dried up. Calls stopped coming. Even the women who once laughed with her distanced themselves, not wanting her stain on their names. Behind the scenes, I filed for divorce. With evidence of verbal and emotional abuse, my lawyer assured me the case tilted heavily in my favor. Property division protected, spousal support, not a chance. Custody if contested. My side had the weight of stability and respect. By the time she realized what was happening, it was too late. Her tears at my door were just the beginning of a much longer fall. One where every step down was a direct echo of the cruelty she had once thought was funny. And the best part, I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to become cruel. I just let her choke on the consequences of her own arrogance. Her world falls apart. It didn't take long for the dominoes to tumble. Within 2 weeks, she was already struggling. The spa trips, boutique splurges, and nights out gone. Her credit cards kept declining, and the rescue dog she once mocked wasn't there to refill her bowl of luxuries. Bills began piling up on her apartment floor. Reminders of how completely she had depended on the man she dismissed as easy to control. Worse than the money was the silence. The same friends who once howled with laughter at my expense now ghosted her. Screenshots of her words, "rescue dog, sheets stink like him," circulated quietly in social circles. Nobody wanted to be associated with that kind of arrogance. When she showed up at gatherings, conversations hushed, eyes avoided her. She went from center of attention to unwelcome shadow in a matter of weeks. Then came the court papers. Divorce proceedings launched, backed with damning evidence of emotional abuse and verbal cruelty. The recordings, Texts and testimonies painted a picture of entitlement so ugly that even her lawyer struggled to spin it. The judge's stance was clear: no alimony, no share of assets, and the house fully mine. The balance of power she once flaunted was gone. The law itself had turned against her. One evening, she tried again. Standing on my porch, her voice, she whispered, "I don't want the money. I don't want the house. I just want you back." But there was no conviction in her words, only fear of being left behind. I looked at her with calm finality. "You didn't want me when I was beside you. You only want me now that I'm gone. That's not love. That's desperation." And I shut the door again. She once laughed with her friends that I was a dog she could control. But now she stood outside, cold and abandoned, the one begging for scraps. And this time I didn't even look back. Final chapter. Epilogue. Poetic justice. Months later, I sat on the porch with my son, sipping coffee as the sun rose over the quiet neighborhood. The house felt lighter now, not because it had changed, but because the darkness that once lived inside it was gone. My ex-wife drifted between relatives' couches and small rentals. The woman who once flaunted spa weekends and luxury dinners was now the subject of whispers. Whenever she entered a room, people remembered the screenshots, the recordings, the arrogance. Her friends had moved on. Her reputation was ruined. Even her own family spoke of her in hushed tones, embarrassed by the way she had treated the man who carried her. As for me, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. I rebuilt my routine with dignity and calm, investing in myself, my work, and most importantly, my bond with my son. He once saw me mocked as easy to control. Now he saw me stand tall, not through rage or cruelty, but through patience, strategy, and quiet strength. One evening, when news reached me that she had been asking around for help, I thought back to that moment in the car. Her laughter, her friends' jeers, her words. "He's like a rescue dog. So easy to control." And I couldn't help but smile. Because in the end, it wasn't me on the leash. It was her, bound by the consequences of her own arrogance, abandoned by the very people she had once chosen over me. Was this revenge perfectly justified? Tell us what you think about this story in the comments below. Like the story. If you think this story is justified, share it with someone who needs this energy. And subscribe to Story for more jaw-dropping tales of betrayal and justice. Because here, every lie has its reckoning. And every betrayal finds its shadow. Stay sharp, stay strong, and stay tuned.